With the release of the Fantastic Four First Steps, there are now 37 movies in the MCU, so let's rank them all. Hello everybody, my name is Jesse and welcome to my channel. Fantastic Four First Steps is the 37th movie in the MCU. So today I'm going to give you my ranking of all 37 MCU movies from the worst to the best. In last place, I have The Marvels. Now, the last time I did my full ranking, this was actually second to last, but I've never had the urge to go back to this one. The villain stinks. I can't remember a single line of dialogue, honestly. This is just a very kind of boring and forgettable movie, in my opinion, and it absolutely flies by. It's the shortest MCU movie, I believe, at least one of the shortest, which I think is just kind of one of the reasons that it's not very memorable. It kind of just flies by without actually having any important stuff, any substance to it. So I've always found this to be a very bland MCU movie. Then right above that, I have Captain Marvel. Again, just very forgettable. Doesn't really add anything to the MCU. I mean, I get that they wanted to introduce Captain Marvel as a character before Avengers Endgame. That's why they put this between Infinity War and Endgame. But really, it feels like you could have done the same amount with this character, just having introduced her for the very first time in Avengers Endgame, or having her show up in person in an Infinity War post-credit scene. And this movie just didn't really give me anything to make me care about Captain Marvel as a character. Nick Fury, obviously, Samuel L. Jackson is a standout. I love Goose, the Lurkin. But everything else, the action and everything is just meh. 35, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, a movie that I was far more positive on when it very first came out, but over the last couple of years, since they've completely scrapped the whole Avengers Kang Dynasty plotline, this movie is just becoming less and less relevant. Jonathan Majors is fantastic in this role. He's an intimidating villain as Kang, but since we're never really going to see him again, there's just really not much reason to go back to this movie. 34, Captain America: Brave New World. This was a very disappointing one for me. I thought the trailers looked pretty solid. I was excited for the action. I love Sam Wilson as a character, and I was excited to see what he was going to do with his first solo outing as Captain America. And overall, you can feel the reshoots and the rewrites all over the place. It's very choppy. It's honestly pretty boring in most places, in my opinion. And the one thing that I was really excited for in this movie, Red Hulk, is kind of wasted, and he's only in the movie for about 15, 20 minutes tops. And that whole final battle is just really underwhelming and just really left a bad taste in my mouth. Then I have Thor: The Dark World. This movie, a lot of people are really negative on this movie. I've always enjoyed it a fair amount. Yeah, there are definitely some cons here. It's, it can get kind of slow at times. Malekith is by far one of the worst villains in the entire MCU. But I think what really carries this movie for me is the Thor and Loki dynamic, especially in that second act. I've always really liked that. Tom Hiddleston has a blast in this role. You can see that. I love him as Loki. He's one of my favorite characters in the MCU. Chris Hemsworth, as always, is still great as Thor. So I think there's enough that this movie offers to have it a little bit higher on my list, but it's still not one that I go back to all that often. 32 for me is The Incredible Hulk. And this one has always felt like a really weird one. It doesn't exactly feel like it's in the MCU. It feels like it's part of a completely different thing, like it came out maybe before the MCU started. But again, there's a lot of fun to be had with this movie. Edward Norton does a decent job in the role. He's not my favorite Hulk by any means, but he's decent. I like the more monstrous approach with Hulk in this movie. and the ending with Hulk and Abomination just duking it out on the streets, having a literal boss fight, is a lot of fun. 31, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. It actually kind of hurts me to have this low on my list, and it's possible that I'll like it a lot more after rewatching it again, but this movie was pretty disappointing. I liked it on my first watch, and like with a lot of these other ones, I still have a fair amount of fun with it, but it was kind of a letdown compared to the first Doctor Strange, which obviously you'll see later in this video. But I was really excited for it. I was excited to see Wanda as a villain. They were teasing, kind of bringing in the multiverse, and it was fun. The internet, a couple months before, it was theorizing who's going to be in this movie and what cameos are going to show up. And overall, all that hype kind of left me a little disappointed. I wish we could have explored the actual multiverse a little bit more rather than just a 30-second montage of all these different worlds. But yeah, overall, it's, again, not one that I revisit a lot, but I do enjoy it when I watch it. 30, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And this is, I think this is genuinely the best movie that they could have made with the circumstances that they were under. The entire cast and crew got dealt a terrible hand of cards with the tragic death of Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace. And so they had to figure out a way to make a story without him in the lead role. And I think they did that very, very well. It's a movie that they don't just move on from Chadwick Boseman. They don't say, okay, well, he's not here anymore, whatever, we'll just do our own thing without him. And instead, they make it a story about honoring his legacy and filling in those shoes. And Shuri has to take up the burden of grieving her brother, while also filling the shoes of the Black Panther. I think they do all of that very, very well. Namor is a fantastic villain, one of my favorite villains of Phase 4. And overall, I think really the movie is about 20 minutes too long. That's really my only big issue with it. But overall, I think this is a fantastic sequel, and they did it well. 29, Black Widow. Yes, this movie came out a little bit too late, but I do still think this is a great sort of origin for Black Widow. It's interesting to see a little bit of her backstory, and obviously Florence Pugh as Yelena is a gigantic standout for me. She's most likely my favorite part of this movie. There's some decent action. The villains suck, sure, but overall, I think this is a fun movie that people are a little bit too harsh on sometimes. 28, Ant-Man and the Wasp, a great sequel to the first Ant-Man. Paul Rudd is still hilarious in this role. There's overall a lot more comedy in this movie, I think, than the first one. There's some great action here. They play around a lot with the growing and shrinking tech, and that leads to some great jokes. And just overall, it's not trying to be one of the best MCU movies. It's not trying to have big, jaw-dropping moments. It's just trying to be fun, and that's what it is. 27, Thor, Love and Thunder. I know this is a lot of people's least favorite MCU movie, and if it's not their least, they definitely have it much lower on this list, but I would be lying to myself if I said that I did not love this movie every time I watch it. There are a few things here and there that I wish they would have done better, or I wish they would have done differently. But overall, I have a ton of fun with this movie. The comedy works for me. Maybe I just have a dumb sense of humor, but I love Taika Waititi's style. It's colorful, it's vibrant, it's unique. Christian Bale is great as Gore the God Butcher. I don't think they handled his character quite as well as they could have. There's a few things with him I wish they would have done differently, but he's still great. There's some fantastic standout sequences, especially I don't know the name of it, but that black and white world that they're on, that sequence is always the biggest standout to me. And the scene with Russell Crowe as Zeus, it never fails to make me laugh. 26, I have Thor. I love the Shakespearean vibes that Kenneth Branagh brings. This is just a great origin for Thor's character, and it's interesting to see the journey that he goes on and the growth that he has. There's a lot of fun comedy with him being in unfamiliar territory and kind of knowing what's accepted and what's not. I just think there's a lot to love here. And Tom Hiddleston is awesome as Loki. 25, Eternals, another one that I am far more positive on than most people. I really love this movie. I love the visuals. I genuinely love all of these characters. And I just think the biggest problem with this movie is it's only a movie. And when this movie first came out, a lot of people said it maybe would have worked better as a TV show. I could see that. But I really think when you take away the credits, the movie is only really like 2.5 hours long. And when you're introducing like 12 main characters and a lot of big ideas that have never been introduced before, never been hinted at before, there's just not nearly enough screen time to develop all of them equally and explain all of them equally. And so you end up with characters that get quite a lot of screen time, and you're like, yeah, I really love this character. But then by the end of the movie, you're like, I wish we could have seen more of this character, though. I wish they would have developed him or her a little bit more. And so it can be a little bit frustrating. And at the same time, it can just get kind of overwhelming because there is so much that they're trying to pack in. 24, Iron Man 2, a fantastic sequel to the first Iron Man. I love Whiplash as a villain. He works in the context of this movie. Don Cheadle is great as Rhodey. I love the dynamic between him and Tony throughout the whole movie. And of course, we get War Machine in this movie. We get introduced to Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow for the first time. And just overall, there's a lot of great action, a lot of new things and people that are introduced in this movie that make it worth watching. 23, Spider-Man Far From Home. I really enjoyed this movie. I don't think there's a single bad Spider-Man movie. However, this is my least favorite live-action Spider-Man movie ever. I love Tom Holland. I love Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. He has a ton of fun. You can see that. All of the drones and tech, the visuals are all awesome. There's a couple standout sequences. I just don't really love I think it's interesting that they try to do something different and bring him to a different place. I just don't fully love it. I kind of miss the New York setting when I watch this movie, and when I watch a Spider-Man movie, I just kind of want that New York setting because it works so well with the character. So there's a lot to love in this movie. I just don't go back to it all that often. 22, Avengers Age of Ultron. A great second Avengers movie. We see them fighting as a team again, and this is really the last time that we see all 6 Avengers fighting side by side as a team. I think this is the last time, because even by the end in Endgame, Black Widow is dead, so she's not there any longer. So this is like the last movie that we see all 6 of them fighting on the same team together as a family. And there's some great action that comes with that. James Spader is great as Ultron. I love him as a villain, and there's overall just a lot to love. 21, I have Ant-Man. Once again, like I said with Ant-Man and the Wasp, this is a simple one. It's an easy one to watch and just have fun with it. It's not trying to be super big and epic. It's just trying to introduce a new character with a lighthearted story, and it does that very, very well. There's kind of a heist element with it. I love heist movies, so I really dig that part of it. And overall, I think, once again, the comedy with the growing and shrinking is really good. Number 20, Spider-Man Homecoming. I love Michael Keaton as the Vulture. I love the lesson that Peter has to learn throughout this movie with Iron Man and having to learn to be the hero with or without the suit. And Tony really challenges him in that way. And I love that character development for Spider-Man in this movie. It's one that I just don't revisit a lot. I really have fun with it when I do watch it, but that's the main reason why it's lower on my list. 19, Captain America, the First Avenger. I love this origin story for Steve Rogers. Just the entire vibe of this movie is great. I love seeing him go from a skinny kid that just wants to be a hero, wants to do something of value, and becomes a strong hero that everyone knows and loves and has to make that sacrifice at the very end. Stanley Tucci is great, even though he has limited screen time. He always makes an impact on me when I watch this movie. Overall, it's just a fun time. Number 18, Thunderbolts. This was such a breath fresh of air from the MCU. It was the first really true MCU project in almost 2 years that I actually loved. I really enjoyed Daredevil Born Again earlier this year, and I loved Deadpool and Wolverine last year, but those were also coming from previously established projects that weren't part of the MCU. So Thunderbolts was the first officially MCU project in a long time that I really enjoyed, and it felt really good to walk out of the theater saying, that was great, I loved that. And it managed to take a handful of characters that we already knew about, some of them we had already loved, and it just managed to add even more depth to them, add even more layers, and make us care about them even more. The movie handles its themes in a very, very mature way, represents them in a very unique way in the final battle, I thought. And it does all of it without, preaching or shoving a message down the audience's throat. I thought it was done in a very good way. Doctor Strange. This is one of the most visually stunning movies in the MCU, in my opinion. I love all of the visuals, all of the magic. It all works so well. I remember seeing this movie in 3D back in 2016 when it came out, and just being absolutely blown away up to that point. That was maybe the best 3D that I had ever seen. It was absolutely incredible. I love Benedict Cumberbatch in this role, and Michael Giacchino's score is incredible. It's overall just a great origin for this character. 16, the newest one on this list, The Fantastic Four: First Steps. And I absolutely loved this movie. If you saw my review, you know that I loved pretty much every single thing about this movie. It feels so good to finally get a great Fantastic Four movie. It handles all of the characters extremely well. They feel like a family that you care about and are rooting for the entire time. And this movie has some absolutely phenomenal world building. It's set in a different Earth, separate from the MCU. So the director, the writers, and the whole cast and crew have so much freedom to make their own rules, establish their own world, and make their own interpretation of these characters. And I absolutely love that. Every actor, actress absolutely nails their role. They're all fantastic, no pun intended. And it's, once again, with Doctor Strange, it's visually stunning. And there are several space sequences that I absolutely loved. Galactus is big and an intimidating villain. They finally did him right. So overall, I really loved this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of the year so far. 15, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. There's This has some of the best action in the MCU, in my opinion. I love all of the hand-to-hand combat, the martial arts. Fights are all insane. Tony Leung is incredible as the real Mandarin Wenwu. He's an amazing villain, possibly one of my favorite villains in the MCU. Simu Liu is great in this lead role. The world building, once again, is fantastic, and introducing new worlds like Ta Lo. I can't wait to visit them again. And this is just an awesome MCU movie. 14, Black Panther. Chadwick Boseman is incredible in this lead role. Ryan Coogler did an incredible job with this movie. I love Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger. I know this is like the third time in a row I've said this, but the world building of Wakanda is amazing. Wakanda is one of my favorite fictional places within the MCU, and every time we go back to it, I love it more and more. The music, the action is all fantastic, and the just kind of overall themes of culture is great in this movie. 13, Iron Man 3. This was a fantastic conclusion to Iron Man's trilogy. It perfectly closed out his arc for these movies. He learns by the end he doesn't fully need his suits. He can live on without them. It's not the suits that make him, and he can be a hero with or without them. I absolutely love that. There are, of course, a couple of things. I think obviously the Mandarin reveal is, kind of lame, doesn't hold up as well. Obviously, after Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, that was a little bit fixed. I can forgive them for that. But I really do love this movie for Tony's arc and the final battle with all the Iron Man suits. I can't help but have a good time. Number 12, Thor Ragnarok. I absolutely love this movie. I love what Taika Waititi did with the Thor franchise, and he just infused it with some much needed humor, color. It's vibrant. Like I said with Thor Love and Thunder, I really do enjoy Taika Waititi's directorial style. I love the humor in this movie. I think it all works really, really well. Hela, played by Cate Blanchett, is a great villain. And just overall, there's so much about this movie that I love. Number 11, Captain America Civil War. I love the conflict that Steve and Tony have in this movie. You can see where both sides are coming from. You understand why they're each doing what they're doing, and you understand the conflict. They both are standing for what they think is right, and it makes for a very, very compelling conflict throughout the entire movie for both of them. Zemo is a great villain, and this movie is the reason why Infinity War went the way that it did. I think Zemo tearing apart the Avengers, he succeeded really in his plan, and because the Avengers were apart in Avengers Infinity War, it allowed Thanos to get the stones. They were all way more vulnerable. They weren't able to work as a team. So this movie was very important for that, and so I appreciate it for that a lot. Kicking off the top 10, Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn is probably my favorite director in the entire MCU. He knows how to make a great comic book film. He knows how to handle his characters with such care and make you care about them like a family. He took a group of characters, like Guardians of the Galaxy. Before this movie came out, nobody really knew who they were. They weren't largely popular in the comics. And so he took C-level characters and he made them A-listers within this franchise, and he made them into a family that all had their own personal flaws and strengths, and he made them come together and make them work as a team and make us care about them in ways that we wouldn't have imagined at the beginning of the movie. All of the colors and the exploration of space in this movie, the different planets, are all great, the different like kinds of species. He really just kind of expanded the world of the MCU, and I believe this was the first MCU movie that went outside of just Earth, and so there was a lot that James Gunn did in this movie with all of that I really loved. Just above that, I have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I do think this sequel is slightly better than the first. I love Ego as a villain. I think it adds great personal stakes to Peter and the others. I think it's a little bit more emotional than the first Guardians movie, especially with the ending. Yondu's funeral is one of my favorite scenes in the entire MCU. It never fails to tug on the heartstrings, and the soundtrack is absolutely perfect. This is probably my favorite soundtrack in the entire MCU. I own the record of it. I listen to the songs all the time. So I love everything about this movie. Number 8 is Deadpool and Wolverine. I absolutely had a blast with this movie, and I love all 3 of the Deadpool movies. I knew going in that I was going to love this one, and this is my favorite of the trilogy. Deadpool and Wolverine just work together so well. Their constant bickering and fighting throughout the whole movie is hilarious, leads to some fantastic jokes, and overall, this movie is just everything you want from a Deadpool film. It's got the violence, it's got the humor, there's some great cameos, and overall, this is everything that I wanted this movie to be. And even now, when I think back on certain scenes, it still makes me laugh. 7, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. A phenomenal send-off to all of these characters. I love the way that James Gunn did this and ended having them all go their own separate ways, needing to kind of figure out themselves, and just sending them on their own paths, I think works great. They all get to work together as a team one last time. The High Evolutionary is an absolutely despicable villain that you hate right from the first moment you see him on screen, and you just cannot wait for him to get what's coming to him at the end, and it makes that very satisfying. Just like with the other 2 Guardians movies, the soundtrack and the action are both top tier, so well done, and this is just an awesome movie. Number 6, Spider-Man No Way Home. This is just the culmination of everything that I love about the Spider-Man character and the Spider-Man movies. Seeing all 3 generations of Spider-Man on the big screen together was incredible. I loved that how they did that, and it's they're not just cameos, they actually play a crucial part in the movie, which is brilliant. Bringing back all of the original villains is awesome. Green Goblin is an absolute menace in this movie, and overall this is just a great movie for Peter's growth as a character. He really is at rock bottom in this film. He loses Aunt May, and by the end he has to make that sacrifice to make everyone forget about him, to save the world and stop everything else from coming through. And I just love this movie for that character development, and I can't wait to see more of Tom Holland's Spider-Man in Brand New Day next year. Kicking off the top 5, Avengers Endgame. This was really the big epic kind of conclusion to the Infinity Saga, and it could very well have been the end of the MCU, and I think I would have been happy with that. It closed out everyone's story perfectly, especially Tony, Iron Man. He gets to make the sacrifice to save everyone. His death is a fantastic scene, and I'll admit it made me cry the first time I saw it in theaters, but the year-long gap between Infinity War and this movie was absolutely insane. The MCU won't ever reach that peak again, I don't think, even with Doomsday and Secret Wars. I do not think they will be nearly as big as this movie was. Number 4, Iron Man, the one that kicked off this whole thing. And if this one hadn't succeeded, who knows? We probably wouldn't have even gotten any of these other movies. This is such a phenomenal origin for Iron Man. Tony Stark is my favorite character in the MCU, and this is just a great first story for him. It's simple. There's great action. I love the music, and this movie just still holds up almost 20 years later. It still holds up like it came out yesterday. Number 3, Avengers Infinity War. Again, just like with Avengers Endgame, this is a peak that the MCU will never come across again. This is like the best that they could have done this movie, taking all of these characters, all of these different locations, and they managed to pull it off. And I hope that they're able to do it again in Avengers Doomsday, but I am slightly worried that they're just not going to be able to pull it off nearly as perfectly as they did in this movie. Thanos is a phenomenal villain, my favorite villain in the MCU, and because everybody in this movie, all the heroes, were already established, we already knew their backstories, their motivations, all of that. Thanos was allowed to have the most screen time in this movie and be developed as a character himself. And so by the end of this movie, you know Thanos just as well as any of the other heroes. And I think that's awesome. My runner-up is The Avengers. I do think that the first Avengers is my favorite of the 4. I love Tom Hiddleston as Loki once again. He makes a fantastic villain. And it's just a very simple story of these characters all coming together to work together as a team. It was kind of one of the first big team-up movies in comic book movies, and this kind of is what started that whole trend, and I think it worked out great. Everyone gets a shining moment. There's some great humor, some great action, and it really is just great seeing these characters that kind of hate each other at the beginning and eventually work things out and all work together by the end. But number 1 for me is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Steve and Natasha make a great duo in this movie. I love the spy espionage thriller kind of genre that this movie is. The Winter Soldier is a phenomenal villain. I love how they made Bucky Steve's antagonist in this movie. It makes it very personal, a great villain for his character, and really, like, this is, I love the action once again, really just everything about this movie I really love. So there you have it. That is my ranking of all 37 MCU movies. If you're up for the challenge, let me know your ranking of all these movies down in the comments below. If that's too much, give me your top 5, top 10, whatever you want to do. I have a bunch of other content coming very soon, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, subscribe to my channel, help me reach my goal of 400 subscribers, and keep watching movies.